Hey, what's up, everyone? UFC 249 just happened. I promised I would do a recap and a breakdown of the event as soon as it happened, right afterwards. It came on at 7 a.m. here in Thailand, 6 a.m. for the early prelims. I'm going to go ahead and cover the early prelims and the main prelims and the main card. So 9 fights in total. Got about 3 hours of sleep. So if I'm a little less energized than normal, that's why. I'm gonna try not to be. I thoroughly enjoyed the fights. I thought they were amazing and fantastic. Being a selfish fan, it was what I needed, to watch a UFC event, a live UFC event, and see it take place for 3 hours, or 4 hours, I guess. I got my mind off everything else, and I didn't feel like I was in quarantine. I didn't feel like the world was ending. I didn't worry about the virus. My world was back, it seems like, the MMA world, the fighting world. A couple things to note for some of you out there that it was probably strange for. Obviously with no fans in attendance, it was very different with the audio. I think that played a part for some of the fans at home listening, I guess more so for the realization of the violence, I guess, like the impact it had. It obviously sounds more violent and more impactful when you hear those punches land, you hear those elbows land, you hear those kicks land. But what you got to see tonight was how it is. I mean, that's what we hear when we fight. That's what it sounds like when you're inside the octagon. In between the rounds. I mean, this is almost like a cool, different treat for the MMA fans to get an inside look without all the noise and the sounds from the arena, where you can actually hear, and you gather more intel of what's going on with the fighters and in their heads, and talking to their corners and their breathing and belching and coughing and obviously the fight itself. And you get to hear a lot of talk between the fighters before and after the fight, during the fight, between Bruce Buffer and the fighters and the, whoever. So it was a good treat to I've experienced it being in the octagon, but it was a good treat for you guys to experience that and that have not been in the octagon. I think it was also interesting to see the fighters walking out and then all the corner having face masks on. That was very unique and different, and it kind of set a very different atmosphere. I hope that goes away soon. It's just too creepy for the future. I hope we get over this thing fast and that goes away. I'll have to say this, though. My questions about training in quarantine, and if these guys are going to get in shape, and if they're going to be ready to fight, if they're going to be able to put on good performances, that got answered tonight. So if quarantine or training in quarantine limits your performance, we didn't see it. We definitely didn't see it. I mean, these fighters came out and they performed better than I expected. I think they performed outstanding. And I think the whole card overall gets an A+. And that's not just because I haven't seen a live fight card in a while, but just in general, I think it was a great card. So anyway, let's get to the fights. All right, so for the first fight, Vincent Luque versus Nico Price. This was a rematch. Nico previously lost the first fight, and he came out hungry. He came out aggressive, hungry, wanting to win. You could see it in his eyes. You could see it in his fighting style. Luque was just a more composed, patient, technical fighter, and he did a great job with his leg kicks, strategically, and the power and the damage that they caused. I think worked well in his favor, causing Nico to come in with spurts and flurries, of which Nico would have some success, but then he would get sloppy and then get caught. And so it would kind of not be worth it at the end. Luque was landing the better strikes, the more cleaner strikes, and just overall he was just the better fighter. Nico put up a good fight and he went for it, but it just wasn't enough. Luque ended up dropping him in the third round. I think it was a left hook, big left hook. Boom. Put him down. He got up. And then he had a big cut, and they had to stop the fight over a cut. It sucks to have a fight stopped over a cut, But when you look at the fight and know that Luque was winning the fight anyway, it's not, likely that Nico was going to come back to win regardless. So, I think it was justifiable, and it was Luque's night. All right, so the next fight was Michelle Waterson versus Carla Esparza. I knew this was going to be a good fight. I knew both girls were very talented coming in as world champions. I had picked Michelle Waterson to win this fight. In my picks before this fight, I felt like she was going to show up and do a great job, and I think she did. I think she did show up and do a great job, and I think that really showed in round one. I want to say Esparza looked kind of out of it. I think even when she came out, definitely in the beginning of the first round, during the first round, she wasn't aggressive, and she had that look in her face, almost like she was nervous, which we know that's not the case with her. She's a very experienced fighter, a former champion from 2 organizations. But I just feel like she didn't have the energy, and she didn't have the willpower that Michelle Waterson did, and it was showing. And Michelle was doing a great job of mixing up the leg kicks and the punches. I think she did a good job mixing it up. She did a great job defending the takedown as well. In the beginning, I think the takedowns were quite sloppy from Esparza. Again, I just don't think she showed up early in the fight for whatever reason. And being a fighter, I can attest to, like, sometimes there's just things that happen that cause you not to show up. And I think that's what happened for whatever reason. She just didn't show up and fight her fight from the beginning, and Michelle did. I gave round 1 to Michelle. I don't think there was any. I mean, I feel 100% about that. Round 2 was a little bit closer. Esparza still looked perplexed, I think, in the very, very beginning, but then she started coming back. Michelle did a good job with her kicks again. Esparza was doing takedowns. She was trying to go for more takedowns. A couple of them sloppy. Michelle was doing a great job of defending the takedown and actually landing strikes off the takedowns. Knees and trying to counter with some punches as well. Round 2 could have went either way. I was rooting for Michelle, so in my mind, I gave it to Michelle, but it could have went either way. So, I mean, that's one, that I think the judges could have been inconsistent on. Round 3, Michelle comes out with kicks again. I mean, the good thing that Michelle did was she didn't slow down. She kept to her game plan. She pushed the pace. She mixed up everything well. Her takedown defense was amazing. Esparza started coming back in the second and the third round and putting up a better fight, landing some bigger shots. It won her the fight. It was a split decision. One of the judges gave all the rounds to Michelle, but all in all, 2 judges gave the fight to Esparza, so Esparza won by split decision. All right, so for the next fight, we had Fabricio Werdum versus Alexei Olynyk. Now, this was a fight that surprised me. This was a fight that I picked Werdum, as did everybody. Werdum is one of the best grapplers in the heavyweight division ever. I mean, he's submitted everyone. Nobody's ever dominated him on the ground. I don't think he's ever been submitted. And I felt like the key to victory for Alexei in general, for any fight, is to out grapple a guy, out grapple some or his opponent and win that way. And that wasn't his game plan. He came out in the first round and just had an absolutely dominant round. I will say that Fabricio looked really soft too. That's probably the softest I've ever seen him look. He didn't look, his body, he didn't look in shape, and he didn't look strong, and he didn't fight that way as well in the beginning. Now, on the other hand, Alexei came out and he looked like a beast. I mean, he was strong, he was yoked up, and he was just throwing bombs, just absolute bombs, and he was throwing them in combinations, and a few of them were getting through, each time he did it, and that was hurting Fabricio. And Werdum had to, he had to take a lot of hits, and he did. He absorbed them. His experience kicked in, and he would tie up Alexei as much as he could. In the second round, Werdum got a takedown, and it wasn't crazy significant. So, I don't think it really did a whole lot for him. I think Alexei slowed down a little bit, but was still throwing big bombs. Close round 2. It came to the bombs landing versus the takedown, how much the judges gave the takedown. Obviously, round 1 was Alexei, and then round 2 could have went either way, depending on how much you wanted to score that takedown. Now in round 3, the experience of Werdum showed a lot more. He took a lot of punishment, but he weathered it. He came back. He got some takedowns. He got some good positions. He got his hooks in at one point, and then he got full mount. He almost got the arm. He did a lot on the ground, and I think he definitely won round 3 for sure. So some people say, whoever's winning at the end of the round should that should be a big factor in judging fights, because if it was a fight in a different situation on a street or anywhere else, the person who's winning at the end is probably the one that's going to end up winning the fight. And if someone takes a beating for the first 5 minutes, but they absorb it, and the other guy gets tired, and then you come back and win, you would have won the fight had it been 5 rounds or had it been no rounds and no time limit. But, considering that's not the reality of judging in the UFC, it wasn't enough. It was too little too late. And Alexei Olynyk wins via split decision. I think he earned it. Like I said, I think Werdum won the 3rd round, and the 2nd round was close. But I do think Alexei earned it because he came out there and he fought a different fight. You could tell that he didn't stick to the game plan that Werdum and everyone in the world thought he would, which is why he was the underdog. And he mixed it up, and he came out there and he fought a different fight, and he brought it. I mean, he threw everything he had as hard as he could. He didn't care about getting tired. He did get tired. He did fade throughout the fight, but he didn't care. It wasn't on his mind, so he didn't try and stall out. So, I picked Werdum to win, and I didn't get that one right. Alexei won, and good for him. All right, so for the next fight, Anthony Pettis took on Donald Cerrone. I had picked Anthony Pettis in this fight prior on my picks, but I was hoping to not see Donald Cerrone get knocked out in this fight. He's one of my favorite fighters, and he's so durable. He's just taken so much in his career. He's had so many fights. I was just hoping he would come out and be able to fight kind of like his old self and put on a good fight. And I think he did. I think he put on a great fight. He was very aggressive. I think when you look at Donald Cerrone, when he first walked out, he had that eye of the tiger. And I guess when I saw him across the ring, I could tell that he was going to bring it. And he definitely brought it. He was aggressive. I think he landed decent strikes. Pettis was landing, I guess, the more powerful strikes, the more flashy stuff. Pettis was doing a good job being evasive. That's one thing that he did really well. He was evading a lot of the strikes that Donald was throwing, but he was still coming through and landing those big shots, even though Donald was landing shots as well. Donald got a takedown in the first. Didn't do much with it, but he still got the takedown. I gave the round to Donald, round number 1. That was just my opinion. Round number 2, same kind of thing. Donald being consistent. He was sticking to his game plan. He was landing. It wasn't crazy powerful shots, but he was consistent with them, and he was moving well. Pettis, again, landing the more flashy stuff. Donald gets another takedown, a little bit better, and then Pettis gets back up. He stays active from the bottom, but it's more baby shots, like just little shots to stay active, but that was a good round. It was a good round. It's just a consistent, technical striker that wasn't hitting crazy hard, but staying in the pocket, versus a very evasive fighter who was able to move around, escape any of the power or hard shots, and then land the bigger shots himself. Round number 3, Pettis did pretty well. Again, Cerrone was consistent, coming forward, fighting his fight. I'm impressed with how he was doing. He was taking big shots. All the power shots that Pettis threw, Cerrone took them, So any doubt about Cerrone's jaw and getting weathered and being older, I think that got answered because he definitely took some hard shots. It was a crazy fight. And he took them. I mean, he just kept coming forward. And then the eye poke. And that was just super unfortunate. Pettis clearly, as you can see in the replay, poked Cerrone in the eye. Cerrone kind of stopped. He was hoping that the fight would stop. Pettis came in and landed quite a few strikes. I mean, he definitely caused some extra damage. It took Cerrone a little bit longer than he would have liked to recover. I don't think he actually did fully recover. But it took him a little bit longer, and he took a lot of damage during that time. His face was swollen and cut up, and his eye was swollen shut, and it was a tough break for him on that one. But I was overall impressed with Cerrone. I think he came out and he fought better than I expected him to. Even though Pettis won, I wasn't as impressed with Pettis. I feel like where he's at and where he should be, he should have put on a better fight than he did, in my opinion. But he got the win. So, I mean, he did win, unanimous decision. And so the fight went to him, and it was his night.
What's up, everybody? I am here in Thailand. This is the first time I've ever been here. Been dying to come here for years. The great Mike Swick. He's one of the big reasons he's been trying to pull me down here. What he built down here, AKA Thailand, is incredible. There's people here from all over the world. You can train mixed martial arts here, jiu-jitsu. They have weightlifting, they have cardio, and obviously they have Muay Thai, boxing, everything. I'm telling you guys, I know everybody wants to go to Thailand because Thailand's so cool, but you can't come to Thailand without coming to AKA Thailand. Come on.
All right, so we're moving to the main card now. We had Greg Hardy versus Jorge de Castro. Now, this fight, I picked Greg Hardy in, but I didn't count Castro out. I knew he was a hard puncher. He had good leg kicks. He came out in the first round, and he showed that. He was throwing bombs. I mean, like, he was throwing big bombs. I think Hardy did a great job of evading that, moving well, landing some good shots of his own. Castro was landing big kicks, and then Hardy actually started countering with those as well. So I think the first round, Castro he did have his best performance. He came out and, I guess I was leaning towards maybe Castro, if he kept this pace up and could keep going that way, he could possibly still take the fight. It looked like Greg Hardy was being very technical. He wasn't as aggressive, but he was... He was probably just weathering the storm, and he was much bigger, by the way, too. To look at Castro fighting Greg Hardy it was like two different weight classes. It was like a heavyweight versus a 205er. Crazy. Hardy flirted at the end, landed some big strikes. So hard to pick the first round, I guess. I don't really know. From what I remember, it was the best round Castro had. I think I don't know. It was hard to see how many of those shots he landed and how much damage that they really did because Hardy didn't really show it. I think he definitely got stunned a couple times, but he didn't get stumbled or knocked down or anything. And I think the leg kicks were the biggest factor where Castro could have possibly won that round. But overall, probably most likely Hardy took that round. Round number 2, Castro comes out strong and aggressive. I think he hurt his foot when he threw a leg kick, and then he just completely took off the rest of the round. I think it was like probably 2/3 of the round he just didn't do hardly anything. He just evaded, and I from what I remember, I don't think he punched at all. I think I think he was just taking the round off. Hardy capitalized on that, easily wins the round. So it goes into round 3. Castro does, if it's possible, even less than in round 2. Flops to his back, just lays there, doesn't even attempt to get up. Hardy's landing some punches to his legs and kicks to his legs, and then even Hardy is just frustrated with it and tells Castro to get back up. Castro, the thing that's frustrating about Castro during this fight was he looked fresh. He didn't get tired enough to quit. He didn't get tired enough to have the performance that he did. And this is hard, you know. I get that he may have hurt his foot. I get that he may have been in pain, but we've seen guys with broken hands punch to the end of the fight. You know, we've seen guys with broken feet. I mean, this is a fight. You know, if you're trying to be a fighter and you're going out there to be a champion, you don't take rounds off when you're not even tired and you're fresh still, and you still have powerful kicks and punches because your foot hurts, you know, or whatever reason it is. So I don't think he sucked it up. And he lost. He lost unanimous decision to Greg Hardy, and hats off to Greg Hardy. Hardy capitalized on everything, and he took advantage of where Castro gave up, and I think that's exactly what he did. I'm not a fan of when fighters do that. You know, I think if you get hurt bad enough to not be able to continue fighting aggressively, it should show. You know what I mean? You should be wincing in pain and you know, not being able to walk, or, you know, I think he gave up, in my opinion, and I hate seeing that. I think it could have been a better fight. I'll say that it wasn't a snoozer. Like, I predicted that it could be a knockout fight or a snoozer. It wasn't quite a snoozer. I mean, like, he did give up, but I mean, there was some action. It kept you on the edge of your seat. You were expecting a knockout, especially in the first round, even leading into the second round at any given time, because these guys were throwing heat. So it was exciting for that aspect. But yeah, it just he didn't he didn't do anything and gave up his fight, and he's probably very regretful for that right now. Another interesting thing to note is I think it was Greg Hardy mentioned that he heard DC telling him to check those kicks, because the one thing that was successful with Castro was those kicks. He was landing those low kicks that were definitely adding up on Hardy, and because there was no one in the audience, and because there was not a lot of people in the stadium or wherever they fought in, Hardy could hear DC commenting on the broadcast and was saying that he should check those kicks, and then he did it. So that was an interesting part of the fight that changed the dynamic of, or that showed the dynamic difference between fighting in a packed stadium that's so loud you can barely even hear your corner, versus a stadium where you can hear the announcers talking about your fight in real time while they're doing it. So so Greg Hardy, good performance. You know, not taking anything away from him. He did what he had to do. He didn't show any flaws. He took the kicks, but he countered them. So he you know, he did what he had to do to make the adjustments to stop them from hurting him as much, and he came through with the win. So unanimous decision victory for Greg Hardy. All right, so for the next fight, we have Jeremy Stephens versus Calvin Kattar. I knew this was going to be a tough fight. Kattar came in as the favorite. I picked Stephens on this one just because he's an absolute warlock beast, and because every time I've not picked him in the past, he's won. So I just figured he was going to pull it out, and I think he came out really good in the first. He came out very strong, very aggressive. I felt like he was finding good openings here and there. He was controlling the cage. I will say that Kattar's boxing was really good, and he was finding openings too, and landing some good boxing. I don't know, like it was probably a close round, but I think because of octagon control, pressure, aggression, and the amount of shots that Jeremy Stephens was throwing and landing, I'd give that round to Jeremy. So I think he came out and did fairly well in the first round. Round number 2 showed Kattar's boxing even better. He was landing big shots. You he was coming in, and you could see that he was very composed, and he didn't take anything bad from the first round, and it didn't have any effect on him. And then he just landed the craziest elbow ever. I think it was his right elbow, straight forward, that just dropped Stevens, and then I think it was a left elbow that came across and cut him across his face, and it was a stoppage, or a KO. They called it a KO. So Kattar KOs Stevens, and I think Kattar is going to be approaching the top 5 here pretty soon. So good fight, and I predicted it was going to be a good fight, and I think it lived up to that, and that was definitely one of the first big exciting parts of the main card. So yeah, congratulations to Calvin Kattar. All right, so the next fight was Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho, and I definitely predicted Ngannou, and I definitely predicted KO, but I didn't expect it to happen the way it did. Ngannou's just a beast. I mean, I don't even know what the time was on that knockout, but he just landed a flurry, and I think he missed quite a few as he was doing the flurry, but the ones that he landed, it only took like one. I think he knocked him out in the first punch. It was like a kind of a hook, and then he landed probably another 4 or 5, probably 5. I think I counted 5 punches that he landed. So he probably knocked out Jairzinho like 3 times before he got pulled off. So that was just absolutely brutal. And then that what else can you say? I think you can talk more about the build-up than the fight. It was a crazy fight. That's going to be knockout of the night. I don't know for sure what they announced yet, but man, I don't. It just seems like if Ngannou hits you, it's over. So it's going to take someone like DC, someone that has a good wrestling pedigree to get him on his back and keep him there. So anyway, hats off to Ngannou, winner by KO against Jairzinho. All right, for the next fight we had Henry Cejudo versus Dominique Cruz for the championship bantamweight, and this is an interesting fight. This is the one that I would have picked Dominique Cruz had Dominique Cruz been active in kind of his prime against Cejudo. But considering Dominique took 4 years off and he lost the fight to Cody Garbrandt, I had picked Cejudo in this fight just because of his momentum and how good he had performed in his last few fights. And Cejudo came out very strong. I think he did a great job in the first round. He was very aggressive. I think even one thing to note is when he walked out, Cejudo, he took his hat off and he threw it into the audience, but there was no one in the audience, so I don't know who he threw it to. I thought that was funny. I don't know if he was like nervous or what, but it was interesting to see like the fighters, like I think Dominique Cruz too, kind of like as he was going in the octagon, turned around and put his hands up like you would normally do if there's a big crowd. I think it's just out of habit. The only time I fought with no crowd was in The Ultimate Fighter, and I'd never fought in front of 20,000 people at that time. So, I didn't have a normal way of addressing a stadium full of people. But it was interesting to note in that fight that Henry Cejudo did come out and he threw his hat into the audience, and it was just empty chairs. But he wasn't nervous. And it had no effect of his fighting. Like I said, he was very aggressive. He came out strong. He was landing bigger shots. He was landing leg kicks. Dominique was evasive and moving around like he always does, but just wasn't enough. Cejudo took round 1 for sure, quite dominantly. So in round 2, Cejudo stayed aggressive. Nothing really changed as far as that. Dominique started making probably a little bit stronger of a presence, landing some stuff, trying to find openings and getting some openings. And then there was a head clash between Cejudo and Dominique, which opened up a cut. That was kind of the start of the end. And then Cejudo caught Dominique with a knee, knocked him down. Now, he legitimately got knocked down, but he wasn't out. Cejudo came in like he should have and started punching him. Dominique rolled over kind of in fetal position to try and block the punches, but was still moving. I think that was okay that the fight didn't get stopped at that point, because he wasn't limp. It was a championship fight for one. I think if you fight for the championship, you should either take a beating or not. Like, I don't think you should have a fight stopped unless you're legitimately out or legitimately can't defend yourself, more than not defend yourself, because maybe what you're trying to do is get up, and it's hard to get up and defend yourself at the same time. And I think that's what Dominique was trying to do. He was moving. His hands were on the ground. He had enough weight and enough of his body off of the mat while he was getting hit to show that he wasn't limp. He wasn't knocked out. And then, Cejudo did what he should have done, just be aggressive. And in times like this, when safety's on the line, and especially an event like this where safety is so important, that's what you do. When you have someone down, you flurry. And whether they're landing or not, I mean, the ref thinks that you're hurting him. The ref thinks that it's too much. He's going to stop the fight. You're going to win, so why not? So hats off to Henry Cejudo for doing it. But at the time the fight got stopped, you can see, especially from the replay, that Dominique Cruz was getting back up. And that's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate that they stopped it while he was getting up. Obviously, like Dominique said in the speech afterwards, you can't be knocked out and be getting up at the same time. That being said, and I also want to say that it shouldn't have been stopped. I feel like, it was an early stoppage, and I do think it was definitely an early stoppage, being that it was a championship fight. Again, they should let it play out. I mean, we train hard enough to take a beating if that's what it takes, and for a championship, that's a huge deal. There's a lot on the line. Your life changes when you win a championship. So, if you almost get knocked out but can come back, you want that opportunity. And I think Dominique said that he told his ref that unless he's out, to leave him and let him be and let the fight keep going. So I will agree that it was an early stoppage. I'll definitely agree on that. I'll agree that Henry did what he was supposed to do, and he did nothing wrong. It took a great victory. And I'll also say that had they not stopped the fight, I don't see it going any other way other than Cejudo. So, that being said, I think if Dominique couldn't dominate him when he was fresh and when he was, had full power, and he didn't take those shots, the headbutt, he didn't take the knee, the cardio was there. If he couldn't dominate him then, I don't suspect he's going to dominate him once he takes the headbutt, once he takes the knee and the follow-up shots, and he's almost finished and the panic's setting in, and I'm sure cardio was setting in. So I think it was an early stoppage, but I do think overall, if it had played out, what happened was probably better for Dominique's health. Hope I made that sound correct and I don't sound like I'm contradicting myself. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. I think overall it was better for Dominique to not take any more damage. But yeah, technically, I'd have been mad just like Dominique on a stoppage like that. But congratulations to Henry Cejudo. He won his champion. He defended his belt, and he then retired. Now I don't believe him. I don't believe he's going to retire. I mean, how many fighters have retired and stayed retired? I came back twice. I wasn't even a champion. This guy's a champion, and he's beat everyone. So I don't know if I believe he's going to retire, but he did retire. And if he does retire, hats off to him. I mean, to be a multiple-time champion and to retire on top, beating one of the greatest of all time. I mean, you can't take that away from Dominique. I mean, he did lose his fight to Cody, and he did have a long layoff, but this is a guy who beat everybody in his time. I mean, he was the GOAT of the division. So I think if you're going to retire and you're gonna hang up your gloves, that's the time to do it. So hats off to Henry Cejudo. He wins via TKO stoppage over Dominique Cruz. All right, for the final fight, the main event of UFC 249, we had Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. Tony Ferguson coming in as the favorite and my pick. I think he had more weapons and more abilities to win the fight, though I wouldn't have been surprised coming into this if Justin did get that knockout punch. I just didn't pick him because Ferguson didn't have any knockouts on his record. You know, he's on a 12-fight win streak. He's got so many tools. He can fight from anywhere, and he's never been knocked out. And here is Justin, doesn't have as many tools as Tony, doesn't have the cardio as Tony in his previous fights. I mean, obviously not many people do. And then now he had to knock out Tony, which is something that no one's been able to do before. And then and then they came out, obviously. And then the first round, I think it was a good fight. I think it was a very aggressive fight in the first round. I think Justin was landing the bigger shots. Ferguson was landing. He was a little bit more consistent moving around. He was evading some of the big shots. But it was clear that Gaethje was doing the damage and landing the more power shots. So it was a close call, I think, in the first round. But Gaethje was definitely landing the more power shots. Round number 2, Gaethje came out strong again. Ferguson seems to be stalling now. I think his game plan kind of changed to hope that Gaethje would get a little bit tired and wear down a little bit, where he would be stronger. As far as Ferguson, his cardio would come in and he would be able to take the fight where he wanted to go and then win the fight that way. He starts taking a little bit more punishment. He starts showing signs. His face is getting cut up. He's taking bigger shots. He's getting rocked a little bit. And so that round obviously was Gaethje. For the third round was pretty much a beating. I mean, he just battered Tony. Tony tried to evade as much as he could. He tried to stay in the game and land what he could, but Justin was just landing power bombs and just looking absolutely impressive. I mean, I was surprised at how good he looked in this fight. This was his best performance by far. So for him to show up in a main event like this on a short notice fight, sure, he had 3 extra weeks than he expected, but he took the fight without even having those 3 weeks, and then he got just 3 extra weeks when Tony had a full camp. And to come out there and have his best performance and do so well, I thought was really good. I was very, very impressed, and I think that was a clear dominant victory of that round for Gaethje. Round 4, the same. Gaethje's in control. Gaethje's landing the bigger shots, and then in round 5, it was a stoppage, and rightfully so. I mean, Gaethje was just too much for Ferguson. Seemed like Ferguson was a little mad at first, but I think he shoved Gaethje when Gaethje went over to congratulate him. But I mean, what can you do, man? I mean, I know he's got a lot of pride, and he's on a 12-fight win streak, and he's been thinking about fighting Khabib for a long time, and this just set everything back for him. So I'm sure he had a lot of emotions going on, but I mean, Gaethje just had a great fight, great performance, and then eventually they hugged and things worked out. So, this is what's going to be interesting. Long story short, obviously Gaethje won by TKO, but this is what's interesting because I'm teammates with Khabib, and I'm biased, but you don't have to be with Khabib because he can beat everybody. I mean, he's dominated every single person he's ever fought. He's won every fight he's ever fought. But I said this before. I think I said it during my picks that I posted almost a week ago. Gaethje is the one fighter who I fear the most for Khabib, and the reason being is because of these strikes. I mean, the impact that a strike can have on a fighter. I mean, it can knock you out, and then it's over, and you lose the fight. But B, I mean, it can take you out of your game plan. I mean, it can cause you to not know where you're at, to be struggling to recover, and it can just cause so much damage in so many different ways. And he throws strikes from so many different angles and so many different positions, and he's so powerful with them. He's the guy that I feared the most for someone like Khabib, just because of that reason, though I still pick Khabib in that fight. So I guess in some weird way, even though I picked Ferguson for the fight, I see a clear path of victory for Khabib versus Ferguson. I can see a clear path against Gaethje as well, but I think Gaethje has the ability to do the one thing that can beat Khabib, which is to finish him by a knockout. I don't think anyone's going to outwork Khabib. I don't think anyone's going to submit Khabib. I don't think anyone's going to outdo anything. Definitely out hustle, outwork, out cardio. But Gaethje does have the ability to do the one thing that could possibly beat any fighter, as he's done with everyone that he's beaten so far. So this is going to set up a hell of a fight with Khabib versus Gaethje now, and I think that this could be one of the biggest fights ever. So yeah, congratulations to Gaethje. I think he's pretty happy. He threw his belt down. You know, he doesn't care about the interim belt. He wants the real belt. He wants to get it from Khabib, and, you know, hats off to him. I remember him doing an interview one time where people were asking him about Conor. And, you know, when you fight Conor, that's a huge payday. And he still didn't care. Gaethje still said, you know what, I'd rather fight a real contender than to fight Conor. He didn't even consider him a contender. So just the fact that he has that mentality of like wanting to fight the best and actually be the best versus just making the most amount of money says, you know, a lot for him. It speaks volumes. So, man, I'm a much bigger fan of Gaethje after this fight, and hats off to him for such a big victory. So it was a great show. They pulled it off. More fights are coming up. Can't wait to see how they turn out. I think it was a great show. I think it gave everybody what they needed to see a live sporting event, to get their mind off of this corona pandemic and this virus. And, you know, obviously Souza tested positive for corona, and I hope no one got infected from him and before he got his test results, or during the flight there, or during his camp or whatever. Those are the things that you're just not going to be able to control, and the things that we worry about the most. But overall, I'm super excited about the fact that the UFC did this, and it worked, and we got taken out of this negativity for a while and got to watch a fight. As a fan of MMA, you know, nothing I want to do more than watch a good fight, especially when there's none going on and no sporting events at all. And I'm in Thailand, so I mean, other than Netflix, I ain't even got TV, you know, TV channels and stuff. So it was nice to get away and watch a good fight, and especially one that lived up to the hype. So hats off to the UFC, hats off to Dana, hats off to all the fighters that showed up and fought hard, whether they had a full training camp in their quarantine or not. They showed up, they did good, and yeah. That's it. That's all I got to say. I think I took enough of your time, but that's my breakdown and recap of the UFC 249 fight card. Stay tuned. Great podcast with Rashad Evans coming up. We're posting that either tomorrow or Monday. Fantastic podcast with Rashad. I got Dan Hardy coming up for the second time on my podcast. He obviously gave me one of the worst losses of my career, stopped me from fighting George St. Pierre. That was a contention fight. He went on to fight George St. Pierre, became super famous. So, you know, especially during the broadcast tonight, they showed a big, kind of like a mini little documentary on George St. Pierre, of how he's the greatest and he's the best of all time. And, you know, it sucks that I was so close to sharing the ring with him, and I was one fight away, and I blew it via decision to Dan Hardy. But taking nothing away from Dan Hardy, he showed up and he did his job in his backyard. You know, I had to fly to his backyard to fight him, but I give him full credit. He showed up and he fought. He beat me, and he got the GSP fight, put up a hell of a fight, didn't give up, almost got his arm broke, became super famous over it, and hats off to him. And we'll talk. So we're going to talk on Tuesday. So we'll probably post that podcast on Wednesday. I got more podcasts coming up with some very interesting people, so stay tuned. Subscribe on YouTube. You definitely want to see these podcasts. They're much better when you watch them. We're obviously on the audio platforms: iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher. Subscribe to all of them if you can. I'll keep coming back with these breakdowns and these recaps as long as you like them. I enjoy doing them. I enjoy watching these fights as a fan, so it definitely doesn't bother me to give my opinion to you guys from my experience on what I thought about the fight cards. So anyway, take care, and thanks for watching, and thanks for listening if you're not watching.
Real quick, with Mike Swick.